How to know if a vampire is watching you. Have you ever woken up in the middle of the night, feeling like you're being watched? You might look around the room to see if anything out of the ordinary is present, and there isn't. Maybe someone you don't recognize is staring at you and that feeling doesn't go away, even when they do. It could be paranoia, fear, or it could also be a vampire. The last thing you want is a vampire watching or stalking you, and it's important to take the right precautions if you catch yourself in that situation. You'll learn how to do so in this article. How to know if a vampire is watching you. The most direct way to figure out if a vampire is watching you is by spotting one. Vampires are incredibly similar to human beings. They share many characteristics that might make this task quite difficult. However, by knowing the variations in all of the characteristics, you might be able to save yourself a headache, a broken bar, or worse. Maybe there's this boy at school who has been paying a little too much attention to you, but you don't mind. He has pale skin, and his eyes are a unique shade of red or amber, depending on his diet. Additionally, he is flawless. How could you mind this beautiful boy staring at you every day? He is perfect. After all, that is your first red flag. Perfection does not exist. And every human being is imperfectly perfect all of the time. The minute you find yourself being stared at or followed by someone who genuinely looks perfect, it's time to start looking for garlic in the bulk sections. When you know it's hard to look for vampire characteristics in the daylight because they don't come around until nighttime. With that said, the human body is complex and intelligent beyond our belief. For years, people have been discussing the potential of a sixth sense. We've all probably experienced a moment where things just didn't feel right. Maybe we feel someone watching us, or we just feel like we need to get out of the situation. That right there is your sixth sense. It is without a doubt going to be the number one way you can tell if a vampire is watching you or not. Contrary to popular belief, the sixth sense is not just a movie. And it's not about seeing dead people. It is that feeling in your gut that tells you when something is wrong, and, unfortunately, we often don't listen to it. So, how can we determine if what we are feeling is, in fact, our sixth sense and not just fear? Let's dive a little deeper into his subject. The sixth sense. The sixth sense is a sense that we need and often take for granted. If that sense has ever saved you from an unwanted dinner date with a vampire, you probably haven't taken it for granted since. How do we determine whether or not what we are feeling truly is our sixth sense? It might be hard to tell during the moment. Your blood is rushing, your heart is pounding, your hands are shaking. It is important to try to examine how you feel. Are you feeling fear, or maybe panic? Try to think about why you are afraid and why you are panicking. What is it that's scaring you? Once you can figure out these aspects, you can start to break down the sense. If you can't figure out why you are scared or panicking, but you just feel uneasy or off, that is your sixth sense. It isn't necessarily fear or panic, it is just a warning. One of the most important aspects of the sixth sense is to practice it. A lot of times when we feel it, we don't listen and we continue with what we were doing. This is incredibly dangerous because the body will start to use it less and less until you just aren't getting those warnings anymore. Examine your surroundings. The second best way to figure out if a vampire is watching you is to examine your general surroundings and go through the process of elimination. As we said before, trying to examine the vampire itself might be challenging. Examining your surroundings and figuring out if it's a place where a vampire would be safe and comfortable is your best bet. Religious places. Are you in a church or your home? A church is an unlikely place to find a vampire, and so is a home if it belongs to someone who is fairly religious. Religious artifacts, crucifixes, and holy water are major deterrents for vampires. It is unlikely that they will put themselves in a room with them. Funeral homes and cemeteries are another safe space where the presence of a vampire is unlikely. They are allergic to dead man's blood, and all of the religious symbols might make them uncomfortable. Light darkness. A good thing to look for is the light levels. Vampires love the dark for various reasons. They don't want to be around the sunlight because it can cause them discomfort, headaches, and it reveals their true nature because it makes their skin sparkle. If the area you are in is pretty dark and the curtains are closed, you might be being watched by a vampire. Animals. If you have a cat or a dog at home, you are probably safer than those who don't. Animals act strange around vampires as they can sense them. A vampire isn't likely going to be watching you if you are with your animals. If by some odd reason you feel like you are being watched and your dog is going crazy, boil some garlic. This might be an obvious one, but it is important. Garlic is one of the major things that vampires are sensitive to and one of the most effective deterrents. If you feel someone watching you and you are frying up some onions and garlic or are walking past the garlic in the supermarket, chances are it is something else. If you do happen to feel someone watching you from the shadows and you aren't quite sure, make some garlic sauce. It will send the vampire away like bug spray. Silver is controversial when it comes to vampires. They don't like it and it can kill them if they are stabbed with it, but there is little evidence to prove that they are allergic to it. However, if they believe they can be killed with it, they probably won't want to be around silver. If you feel like you are being watched, maybe throw on some silver jewelry, and if you already are, it probably isn't a vampire. Fire is the only way that can kill a vampire. If you feel like you are being watched, it is probably a good time to light the wood stove or roast some marshmallows over the fire. If you want to know more about fighting off a vampire, we recommend this book. You can also take a look at our complete guide to vampire injuries, the physical characteristics. We have said before that examining the physical characteristics is without a doubt the best way to figure out if a vampire is watching you or not. Chances are if you feel like someone is watching you, you can probably see them or the general area where you get that feeling. Vampires love the dark, so if you're in the dark, the best thing you can do is light up that room. Once the room is lit up and you have a better look at everything, you can sort through the people who might be vampires. If there isn't anyone in the room, it probably isn't a vampire since they aren't invisible. Look for perfection. As we have said before, does the person look too good to be true? This is also subjective and might not be accurate. What we find perfect in someone might not be universal for everybody, but vampires are perfect, universally. The next best trait is their teeth. Get them talking and see if you can see those sharp canines they are packing. If the teeth are dull, they probably aren't a vampire. If they do have sharp canines and you get close enough to smell their breath, it could be a vampire. The skin tone is another great way to determine if a vampire is watching you or not. Does the person have pale skin that almost looks unnatural? Does it look cold and hard like stone or ice? You might just have a vampire problem. Related questions: are vampires fast enough to leave without me seeing? This is a great question. Vampires are incredibly fast. One of their best abilities is their speed. It is very possible that a vampire could be watching you but left without you knowing, depending on how fast you turned on the lights. However, they aren't invisible and they can't go through walls. They would need to open a window or a door. So unless they can run extremely fast and somehow slip through a window or a door without you noticing, you will probably be able to tell. If you felt someone watching you, turned on your light, and heard the door slam, you might have been watched by a vampire. If a vampire is watching me, will I be able to smell them? If they were close enough, yes. There has been a discussion for years on whether or not vampires have a smell. Technically, they should smell like a decaying dead body, but that would be too obvious. Some have said that vampires have intense scents of cologne and incense to cover their true scent. Others have said that they simply smell like the people or areas they are currently in. However, the smell of a vampire's breath is indisputable. They hate mint and probably do not ever brush their teeth. If you were feasting on dead bodies and blood all day long without brushing your teeth, your breath would probably smell horrific.